No fear. No political correctness. No wokeism. You're listening to Underground USA.
Thanks for downloading, listening, and sharing. My name is Frank Salvato. Before we get to this morning's segment on America's Third Watch, I want to comment on the self-righteous virtue signaling of the pro-Palestinian protesters here in the United States and in Europe. It was reported this morning that pro-Palestinian, you got to read that as pro-Hamas, that pro-Palestinian protesters blocked both the Golden Gate Bridge in California and the Kennedy Expressway feeder to the O'Hare Airport in Chicago, the latter causing people to miss their flights. If you've ever missed a flight, you know how hard it is to reschedule and that it most often costs you extra to get seated at another flight. The point I'm trying to make is this. No one affected by the blocking of traffic or the blocking of building access, the blocking of anything, whether it's pro-Palestinian protesters, BLM protesters, or any other cause du jour protesters, is sympathetic to the protesters' cause. The actions of these protesters, regardless of their cause, only serve to alienate and antagonize the very people they are trying to win over. In fact, when someone trying to make a flight, get to work, or walk into a building is obstructed by these types of protests, it creates a wave of anger, not in support of the cause being protested, but towards the protesters themselves. People see these obstructive displays as selfish displays of self-righteous virtue signaling that telegraph the protesters' sense of elevated importance over everybody else. How does making someone miss a flight benefit the Palestinian people? How does making someone late for work or a doctor's appointment? How does impeding an ambulance's emergency run to a hospital, or a fire engine's run to a fire, or a police response to a deadly situation make people feel sympathetic to a protester's cause? It doesn't. It foments anger towards the protester and, through that, creates indifference and resentment toward the cause itself. Taking to the streets in protest in the United States and the free nations of the world has become an exercise in pious, pseudo-moralistic posturing that achieves very little, if anything. If protesters are sincere about advancing support for their causes, they have to engage the population with information, education, and fact-based argument, not actions that literally turn the population against them, like blocking streets, bridges, and business entryways. The people who do that, well, they're just self-important, juvenile, virtue-signaling assholes. Coming up, this morning's segment on America's Third Watch, broadcast on the Genesis and Salem Broadcasting Networks.
You're listening to Underground USA.
I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. My main focus was to be the best I could be on the basketball court. The first inkling that something was wrong was I started to notice that I couldn't do things without losing my breath. I still didn't think that it was anything serious until I couldn't make it to the airport. Every 20 or 30 yards, I had to sit down and get my breath. Every physical exertion seemed to exhaust me. I knew something was wrong, and then I went to a baseball game with some friends, and I couldn't deal with any exertion. And finally, I went from the baseball game to the hospital where I was diagnosed with AFib. When I first noticed symptoms, I should have gone to the doctor and told him what was happening. Instead, I tried to let it pass. It took me listening to the cardiologist to help me get it straight as to what I needed to do. AFib increases the risk of stroke about 5 times. So you need to go and find out what's happening. You need to know all of it, and you need to deal with it It took me a while before I got wise. The No Time to Wait campaign expresses the urgency that people need to find out if they have AFib. I want my experience to help others understand the symptoms of atrial fibrillation. I didn't pay attention to my symptoms, which kept coming and going, or discuss them with my doctor. Experiencing irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain, or any other AFib symptoms, including shortness of breath, fatigue, or lightheadedness, you should talk to your doctor. When it comes to your health, this is no time to wait.
News, insight, passion. AM 930, The Answer.
Well, I know you've been watching this all weekend long, as we have as well. Everybody has been glued to this. But certainly, Frank, we did see the attack, and we saw how it got repelled, basically. Watching those anti-missile systems take out those drones and the other missiles that were coming in over Israel, it was really something to see. Very dramatic video of watching these things at work. Now, just imagine if this continues on, or would continue on. Eventually, they might get through, but it wasn't to be, and that's a good thing. The world is still, though, very different, because we're going to see what Israel's going to do next. But what do you think the state of affairs is right now?
No, it's up in the air. Iran, everyone needs to understand that Iran doesn't look at this as a loss. They're trying to light the candle in the Middle East. They want confrontation, so this is just the first act that's going to be one of many, I fear. What we didn't understand completely is that the Israeli defense systems, if in fact their allies back them up, are incredible. I mean, it was impressive when only 1% of what they shot off that affected anything. That's a heck of a number.
Yeah,
to be able to be 99% effective. So it's crucial that the allies stand with Israel, not only in rearming them, but in providing aid in their defense. Because without what the allies contributed, especially Britain and the U.S., without that element, it would have been a much different story in the end. Now, the retaliation on Iran, let's figure out how to do it smart. I don't necessarily agree with the Biden administration's idea that it needs to be 100% diplomatic. I think we can use special forces and clandestine forces to really throw a wrench into their military machine, especially when it comes to their nuclear aspirations. Just like the Israelis did before when they inserted a virus, which they won't admit. But
Stuxnet. Yeah.
But Iran will, if they keep doing things like they did Saturday, they're necessarily going to be depleting their arsenal. We need to monitor who's helping them rearm up.
Mm-hmm. Well, Joe Biden has evidently told Benjamin Netanyahu that Israel got a win, and this is the primary reason why they don't need to do anything after this. I mean, what do you think of that?
The win, it was a win because they demonstrated they have a superior defense force. I mean, like I said, that was impressive. 99% success is impressive. But they don't need to do anything, and you shouldn't do anything, and don't you dare do anything. He doesn't have the right to say that to another nation. He just doesn't. That would be like the world telling us you don't act after 9/11. You just, you can try and be diplomatic with Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, but we don't want you lashing out against them violently because we're just not going to tolerate it. We would have said, screw you.
Exactly. Well, Biden has to tell them, show restraint or don't do anything, because Biden's in the midst of trying to woo voters in this country that in some groups are actually pro-Hamas. I mean, this is really, really screwed up.
It is cowardly of him to put politics before the well-being of human lives. That's the only thing I can say about it. If he's putting his, I need to be in power and I need to win this election ahead of the people of an entire country that are loyal to the United States, then he's a horrible, horrible person. He's a horrible person. You don't do that to allies. Why? Because I need power, so it's okay if you die. I won't help you defend against terrorists who are attacking your country because I need to be in power. That's selfish.
Yeah, indeed. And, well, of course, I was really pleased that the United States forces were so instrumental, too, in helping to protect Israel. But it's that grudging, sort of protection that the Biden administration in and of itself has. That's what I think is very, very concerning for just the reasons that you just enumerated.
Well, you can't put politics ahead of keeping World War III at bay. Because really that's where we are. This regional thing that's happening here could go bad quick.
Yeah.
Depending on who wants to side with Iran, and we already know that they're kind of a nexus with Red China, with North Korea, and with Russia.
Looking back at what was happening in 2024 for the election season, and they realized that the leading presidential candidate had to be tied up in all of these different court cases, that there had to be all this stuff that was simply geared to keeping him off the campaign trail or off the ballot entirely. I wonder what they might think about this. Sometimes we get some perspective, far into the future. We looked at past events and we say, yeah, we see exactly what they were doing. So what do you think? I mean, obviously, a lot of people see what's happening. The reason I bring this up is that Sununu was asked about this earlier, about what people think about Donald Trump if he got convicted. Stephanopoulos was asking Governor Chris Sununu of New Hampshire, what happens if he gets convicted? And he said people see this as some kind of reality TV. Do you think he's got something there?
Well, it's the ultimate reality TV.
Yeah.
Because it affects everybody. In the long run, it affects everybody because we're talking about somebody who's vying for leadership in our government. So it's not a game. It's not a game reality TV show. It's, boy, this is actually happening right in front of our eyes and we're witnessing this. Yeah, it's that kind of reality TV. I said this years ago when Barack Obama was first running for president. And I said, don't let the Chicago politics genie out of the bottle. I said, it's going to be very bad for the country, and you will not be able to get it back in. And the reason that I allude to that is because the tactics of the Democrat Party are Chicago tactics. How do we cripple the opposition so that we're the only choice? And that's what they're doing with lawfare. They've decided to go after him, not one-on-one, mano-a-mano in the arena of politics, where it's an election that matters. They're doing smoky backroom dark money politics that is endemic of Chicago and Tammany Hall in New York, where it's, you win at all cost, whether it's dirty or not. The lawsuits are dirty. If you spend maybe 10 minutes listening to Alan Dershowitz, who by no stretch of the imagination is a friend of the Republican Party.
Right, no kidding. Yeah.
He spells it out for you. This is ridiculous. It's unconstitutional across the board. And this is the result of George Soros interfering in elections with his money to get neo-fascist progressive district attorneys and attorney generals elected to office. This is dirty politics. This is dark money, dirty politics. Democrats don't want to admit it, but it is the Chicago genie that's out of the bottle. So when they say that, we stand for justice and we stand for the little guy and social justice this and equity that, it's just a bald-faced lie because their actions speak louder than words.
Oh, sure. Well, this whole thing about going after Trump the way that they're doing it, as you're describing quite rightly, and is I would think, well, if Trump was going to fizzle, and they really, everything's so much better and the adults are in the room and all that other stuff, then why not just let Trump go out there and fizzle? In fact, we want him to be the nominee, should be their mantra, but they're treating him like, they have to really destroy him or else they're going to lose.
If they had something to run on, they'd be running on it.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing here. They had 3+ years, and they've said it all along. Oh, it's much better since Donald Trump is. It's so much better. Okay, then run on the economy. Okay, then run on the secure border. Okay, then run on how everybody's doing better in their wallet. Run on how wonderful the world's going with no conflict and everybody's getting along. Run on that. But they can't, because everything they say is political talking point rhetoric that's so hollow it whistles in the wind.
Yeah. And for the life of me, still, this is their saying, but for the life of me, I don't know how Donald Trump is stealing our democracy. I don't get it.
Well, as far as I know, in November, elections are still taking place.
Right.
Now when democracy is stolen, as in Ukraine, elections are suspended. In Venezuela, elections are suspended. If they don't like what's happening in the streets in Havana, Cuba, elections get suspended. Yep. In Moscow, if they don't like the way it's going, suddenly opposition dies. That's stealing democracy.
But if that were ever to occur here, and again, this is far-fetched and just, theoretical food for thought, but if that were to happen here, they would no doubt say, we are going to save democracy by doing what we're doing. And that would be our authority, quote unquote, the Democrat Party might say.
Then they have to explain to me how not providing Secret Service protection for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is saving democracy.
Good point.
Here's somebody who had two people in very high places, President of the United States and Attorney General running for President of the United States, same family, assassinated. You can't tell me that there's somebody out there who's going, I can make a name for myself and become the guy who did the hat trick. But they refuse him 5 times? How is that defending democracy?
Yeah. No kidding. And I think they're afraid of RFK Jr. as well.
Well,
no doubt.
They see him as a spoiler.
Yeah.
Because when he's added to the mix in every single poll, he pulls from Joe Biden. And they know that in order to be able to maintain the edge so they can affect I count the votes, so I guess we can throw the fudge factor in there. In order to keep that, they have to keep it as close as possible. And then the shenanigans will happen again in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Arizona, in all of the swing states that everybody raised an eyebrow with last time because it did happen. You can argue whether it was stolen or not stolen, but you can't argue the fact that after the election, people were looking at certain states that were problematic in the vote counting, and they did find irregularities there.
Well, of course they did. Yeah, and And by the way, and I appreciate what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said recently in an interview, and he said that, he said, well, it's much different to question the results of an election, of which Donald Trump did question, just like Stacey Abrams, I should say, questioned it.
And Hillary Clinton.
And Hillary Clinton, exactly. But it's much different to do that than it is to try to usurp the First Amendment by going to these social media companies and trying to silence people and stuff like this and take control. And I think he rankled a lot of feathers when he said that kind of thing.
Well, he speaks the truth, and a lot of times the truth offends people who don't understand that it's the truth. Right. That's just the way it is. The First Amendment is sacrosanct in any country that says they're free. Without freedom of speech, there is no freedom. Period. Dot.
Yep.
So you've got this Hillary Clinton. They stole the election. They stole the election from me. This is an illegitimate president. It's an illegitimate win. Stacey Abrams, the same thing. You can say whatever you want. The consequences will be how the people look at you. But to stifle free speech and censor people and remove the opposition from the ballot?
And, of course, we got Frank Salvato with us, everybody. UndergroundUSA.com is the website. Frank's also author of the book Nullification, which you can find out all about there. But you can also go to Amazon.com, I believe. Isn't that correct, Frank Salvato?
Absolutely, Mr. Kyle.
All right. Very cool. Well, people can do that. Just type in the book title or type in your name, and they should be off and running.
That's correct. You can get it in Kindle format or you can get it in paperback. It's my hope you read it and pass it on to somebody who's you trust in statewide elected office, so they open their eyes to the reality that, there is a recourse for overreaching federal government in this day and age, and that is for your state legislatures to nullify unconstitutional federal edicts and laws. They can do that. It is their purview under the Constitution.
Well, one of the big issues, obviously, that is now front and center where states' rights are concerned is the abortion issue. And does this enter into the nullification aspect of things? Or in other words, let's say, for example, if somebody tried to do a national abortion law or something like that, and if it's not part of the Constitution in the sense that the Supreme Court sent it back to the states, would that also enter into the mix somehow?
Yeah, it would. The bottom line with the abortion issue, and this is why the right just absolutely sucks at messaging. They should be taking the position that I don't know what you're ticked about, pro-abortion people. You've got more freedom to do whatever you want to state by state.
Right.
That's the thing. If you look at the abortion law in California now, I mean, it's almost as if they can abort someone a year after they're born. There are some states that don't believe in it. They have their idea of the way it should be. The other states have maybe something that's a little more liberal. But literally, there is more freedom across the spectrum where the subject of abortion is concerned than there's ever been, even under Roe v. Wade. So the messaging aspect of the conservative movement when it comes to this, where it's this absolute thing, move it away from I'm not saying that it doesn't have an element into it and that it's not a moral issue. It is. But if you want to win politically, start questioning the points of this issue that make a difference with the people who don't value the morality of it as much as you do. If there's more freedom in New York and Illinois and California, point that out. Point that out. People were going from state to state to get away from state COVID mandates. You're telling me they wouldn't, if they really wanted to, they couldn't go to another state to get that procedure done? I don't believe it. I don't believe the idea that the pro-abortion people are saying it's such a taxing thing, and they can't have it. They can't get it done. It's ruining their life. This lack of access to women's reproductive rights, and I don't know how ending a pregnancy is a reproductive right. I don't get that either, because it has nothing to do with reproduction. It has to do with ending production. But this idea that there has to be a centralized law about this is antithetical to everything we were set up to be. I've said this I don't know how many times. 50 separate states, 50 separate constitutions. The federal government is supposed to have the smallest footprint in your life, not the largest one, the way the Democrats and the progressives have transformed it into being. So if you don't like the laws in one state, you've got the freedom to go to another one.
Well, right. And this, I don't know if you've heard what Whoopi Goldberg said late last week, and that is that the GOP wants to bring back slavery. So, in other words, but it's still like a two-way street here. A particular state, just to push back on what Whoopi Goldberg's talking about, a state couldn't actually implement slavery and then not pass muster with the U.S. Constitution at that point. So it does go both ways, one would think.
Well, if it's constitutional, then trying to nullify something that's constitutional, you can't do.
Mm-hmm.
Then you will lose in the Supreme Court when it gets there. Nullification is to be used for unconstitutional measures. When they went after Abbott and the people in Texas for trying to secure their own border, that kind of litigation, you nullify it and don't recognize it. So you can't keep me from doing that. There's nothing in the Constitution that says I can't. As a matter of fact, the 10th Amendment secures my right to do this, along with the 9th Amendment. So it's about these mandates. You have a mask mandate. The federal government says that you will have a mask mandate. You will close all your restaurants. No. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives you the authority to disrupt the economy of a state because a bureaucratic department or agency has decided they're going to create a regulation in order to make you do it. You want to litigate it? That's fine, but we nullify it at this point in time. And that's not an easy process to do. I'm not saying that nullification is something that's easy. It's not. You have to go through the state legislature to get it passed, and it's probably going to be a supermajority needed in the legislature. Then the governor's got to sign it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate what you say so much, Frank, because this idea, that word you just used, easy. Well, none of this stuff ever really is easy per se. That's why it's hard to grind out, self-governance, through, as in our system. It's not going to be pretty and it's not going to be easy. But what happens, though, is that there is that easy road, which turns into the groupthink. Oh, yeah, we all got to wear the mask. Oh, yeah, we all got to shut down everything. Oh, yeah, well, Dr. Fauci said so. And then it takes on a life of its own, and people don't realize that you do have choices.
That's what has helped the left centralize the federal government, power into the federal government. That's the easy way out. Let's create a federal law about this. And every single time that you do that on a particular issue, you move power away from being closest to you at the state level to the federal level, which makes trying to change it if it's a bad law 100 times harder.
Yeah. Indeed. I'm telling you, folks, you're not hearing this kind of stuff all over the place. You're hearing it right here. And this is the stuff, Frank, of the very fabric of what makes our union actually thrive, is the ability, and not just have the Mount Olympus somewhere and then you just have to, that's all there is.
We call it a union because it is a union of states. It's a compact of 50 separate states in the creation of a federal government. It's supposed to be the grout that fills in the cracks in the tile. It's not supposed to be the tile itself. It's supposed to be the thing that binds us together, and that's why federal purview is so specific. Immigration, which they're not doing right now, by the way. Common defense, things like that. It's not supposed to be, well, we're gonna figure out how to tax the outlets in your house. If you have over 10, then it's going to be more money. Because certain states do that. You're laughing, but
yeah.
try to build something in Florida and get away with that in some counties. But it's the truth. The federal government's not supposed to have this all-encompassing power that they have. The states are supposed to have that kind of a power.
Indeed. Well, Frank Salvato, undergroundusa.com, author of the book Nullification. The time has flown by, as always, and we're going to look forward to talking with you again on Friday, my friend.
Stay low, my friend.
If you like the podcast, subscribe, leave a comment, rate it if your platform lets you. Be sure to head on over to undergroundusa.com to sign up for our Substack, which comes straight to you, circumventing the censors and the fact checkers, because we both know that they're worthless, and that's been proven over time. And be sure to pick up your copy of Nullification, the Case for Decentralizing the Federal Government, available in Kindle and paperback over at Amazon.com. You're listening to Underground USA. My name is Frank Salvato, and we will be back right after this.
This podcast is a production of the Compass Point Group.
When someone is having a stroke, every minute counts. Just as putting out a fire quickly can stop it from spreading, treating a stroke quickly can reduce damage to the brain. The clock begins ticking as soon as you spot the signs of a stroke, because some treatments can only be used if the patient reaches the hospital in the first 3 hours after symptoms appear. So don't wait. Call 911 right away and get the person to a hospital immediately, even if the symptoms go away. If you think someone is having a stroke, remember the word FAST. F is for face. Ask the person to smile and check whether one side of their face is drooping. A is for arms. Have the person raise both arms and see if one arm drifts downwards. S is for speech. Ask the person to repeat a short phrase and notice if their words sound slurred. And finally, T is for time. If you spot any of these signs, call 911 right away to get the person to a hospital fast. Strokes are medical emergencies. The sooner a patient gets treatment, the better their chance of a good recovery.